Okay, this is going to be the introductory video to my channel here, my new channel, which is going to be exclusively philosophical, um, anywhere from musings about some philosophical topic I want to talk about or comments I have to say to like full-on essays, um, with explanations and, obviously accepting criticism and comments and then maybe answering them. Anyway, let me get into it before my 20 minutes are up. I don't want to make this longer than 20 minutes. The channel name is Five Red Apples. Uh, if you know Wittgenstein, you might know that this is an allusion to his philosophical investigations where he uses the phrase five red apples to demonstrate how language works in what he calls language games, and to kind of like argue for how meaning is derived through use. Um, anyway, that's the allusion. Um, and so I have various philosophical interests, and you would expect that those are going to be the things that you're mainly going to find on this channel. I wouldn't say exclusively, but yeah, mainly. But yeah, my interest and my interest gets piqued as I learn new things, as I study more deeply, and then I'll start to study new things and write different papers or yeah, just have different views on things. All right, so let's get into it. Some of these are going to be like just fairly, I don't want to say shallow, but fairly, yeah, just like a mild interest, not very deeply researched or not very deeply studied. And others are going to be like a more deeply, like more rigorously pursued, and even obviously, and not obviously, but I have papers on some of these topics. Anyway, Socrates, number one. Socrates not so much for his philosophy, but for his attitude towards knowledge acquisition, which was like a healthy respect for our own ignorance, right? And not to be too quick to form beliefs, not too quick to think you know things that you really don't know yet. Um, yeah, so Socrates. Two, Nietzsche. Nietzsche, one of my top three favorite philosophers. Um, he was my gateway into philosophy. I started reading Nietzsche. I forget how old I was, but this is before I went to college. I started reading Nietzsche, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna do philosophy. I want to do philosophy for a living. And then I went to I went to UCLA where it's just analytic stuff. So there's no more Nietzsche for me. And I'm an analytic philosopher. This is my kind of philosophy. But Nietzsche to me is still top three all time. Um, Gottlob Frege. So as an analytic guy, of course I like Frege. Of course I like Russell. Of course I like Wittgenstein. We can throw in G.E. Moore. I like G.E. Moore. I just don't think he was one of the like headier philosophers, let's say, but he still has some interesting things to say. Anyway, Gottlob Frege, he gets the analytic philosophy ball rolling. And him, along with Russell, who's at number four, uh, are going to be the major reason for the what we call the linguistic turn in philosophy, which to me is still the major shift in philosophy in the history of philosophy. Um, Okay, and then on the heels of Frege and Russell is Wittgenstein, who is my again top three. So I have Nietzsche and Russell. I mean Nietzsche and excuse me, Nietzsche and Wittgenstein as my top three. It's late. I'm videoing this late. Anyway, so Wittgenstein top three. The depth of rigor was new to me. And so he sets a new standard. So once you see how deeply or how rigorously or how well philosophy can be done, then you reassess where you are on this spectrum, and so and then you have new standards or you have a new target to shoot for as far as like how well uh yeah, philosophy can be done and what you should strive to achieve. And so Wittgenstein's that for me. He is, if anyone has, if I try to do philosophy like any one person, it's Wittgenstein. Obviously, I'm not Wittgenstein. I don't come close to Wittgenstein, but he's the goal. He's the target, let's say. Okay. I have an interest in the history of ideas. Just any like any idea, like a political idea, a psychology idea, or psychological idea. Yeah. So I also have a history in the history of analytic philosophy. I tend to trace it back to like British idealism, and then move forward onto Russell and Frege, and then a little bit G. E. Moore, and then Wittgenstein, and so on. Um, but you can go back further as far as when you think analytic philosophy began. People have differing views, but yeah, uh, British idealism is roughly where I like to start um, as an entryway into Russell and Frege. Anyway, philosophy of language is my favorite subfield in philosophy. I also think that if I do good work in philosophy, it is here. Um, and I think it's a very important field because there are a lot of subtleties in philosophy of language. There's a lot of ways that language, as Wittgenstein said, can lead you astray. And to get clear on these ways and to like to un to unmuddle your mind, let's say, is very important when you're thinking about any topic in philosophy. But I think like if you study any subfield in philosophy, you will get better at philosophy. But I think philosophy of language offers certain kinds of problems that will help sharpen your mind even more, let's say. Okay, ethics. Ethics. I don't do a lot of ethics. Obviously, I think ethics is important just for like humanity's sake, and in that sense, it's like more interesting. And I have a particular ethical view. I am a moral particularist. Um, I came to this position on my own. I've hatched out pretty much my own like version of it, and then I discovered what moral particularism was, and what I didn't even know was a thing. And then I discovered, not discovered, but then yeah, then I think Jonathan Dancy is like the biggest proponent, or the biggest name in moral particularism. But moral particularists come in different flavors, as they say. Okay, so next. Metaphysics. Metaphysical problems to me are probably like not only are they like some of the oldest problems, like the Greeks did a lot of metaphysics. I think it's a good way to get into analytic philosophy. I think metaphysics and then maybe philosophy of mind would I would recommend to people that are getting into philosophy. Then maybe like epistemology. I would not jump into, for example, philosophy of mind or philosophy of science. Like those are just like very difficult fields to like to start off with, let's say. So if you're new to analytic philosophy, take on problems from the metaphysics subfield or the philosophy of language subfield or even maybe epistemology. Okay, next, epistemology. Um, Another interest of mine, I especially like the Gettier problem, um, and other like problems, many problems, but the Gettier problem is as of late an interest of mine, and I'll be putting forward some papers and videos related to the Gettier problem. I mentioned already British idealism. Um, the British idealists had formidable views. I don't think like Frege, I don't think Frege, Russell, and and G. E. Moore came along and refuted them. Um, Although definitely they made some of their views less popular, which sometimes is damning enough. But for my interest, I like to understand British idealism as kind of like foil, or kind of like what um, Russell and Frege and G. E. Moore were arguing against in some regards. Okay, the problem of universals. The problem of universals is a perennial problem in the philosophy in metaphysics. Uh, this is also a very good way, I think, taking on this problem. I'm trying to understand this problem, not trying to like solve it, but just trying to figure out what's going on here is a good way to get into philosophy. Michael Liu has some good books on this. I'll make a series, I think, of this, but right now I have other things that I'm working on. Moral particularism, I mentioned already. That's my personal ethical theory. Basically, the idea that is that there are no moral tenets, right? There are no universal moral. tenets that say stealing is wrong and it's wrong in all cases. So in other words, Kant was wrong. Okay, John McDowell, my favorite living philosopher. Um, the slight irony is that a lot of what McDowell says goes over my head. Just because he does not dumb down his books, he does not write introductory books, and he's a very good philosopher. Um, but I think I understand maybe like a third of what he's saying. But the third that I understand, I tend to like, yeah, I think he's very insightful. He's just a hard read though. Like not necessarily because what he talks about is difficult to comprehend. Some of it obviously is, but just because he's not a very like good writer. Um, yeah, if I can say that. I think I can. Okay, David Kaplan. I think I mentioned already, I got my BA at UCLA. I took a couple of classes with Kaplan. I ended up dropping one of his classes at the midterm because after I had finished the midterm paper, which was like, I finished it with like a day, maybe a day and a half before it was due. I didn't, I didn't like my conclusions. I didn't like I didn't like the cogency of the paper. I and so then a new idea struck me, a new thought struck me, a new perspective on the question struck me. But I didn't have time to finish the paper. Like it wouldn't have been good. I needed to think, I needed to think through it a lot more than the day and a half that was left to me. So I ended up dropping the class. But I took another one of his classes, the class on I forget if it was the Russell class or the Frege class. I think it was the I dropped the Frege class and I I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Either I finished the class on Russell or I finished the class on Frege. But I got a very good grade in his class, and yeah, it's still one of my most proudest academic achievements. Is like how well I did in his class. Um, and then finally, I will have philosophical musings. Let me put this. Can I? Okay, I kind of can't. Oh yeah, maybe I can. I can do it from here. Do, do, do. Okay. Yeah, like I said, on one end of the spectrum, I will have rigorous arguments, and on the other end of the spectrum, I will just have some light-hearted, maybe even whimsical, maybe even foolish musings on certain topics. I probably won't go like anything beyond introductory level stuff on some of these topics. Um, and I won't pretend to offer rigorous arguments. They're kind of just my maybe sometimes my biases or something that I know I'm not offering like in-depth arguments for, but I think I have something to say. Yeah, so I'll offer them as musings. I'm not going to offer them as arguments I'm willing to like die on a hill for. Anyway, Aristotle, top all time philosophers. He's only here on there because he rounds off my top three all time favorite, not all time favorite, but I think all time great philosophers. Like I don't really read Aristotle. I do like his Nicomachean Ethics. It's a virtue ethics. I think it's one of the best virtue ethics written. Um, but I don't agree with his ethics. Anyway, his ethical view is not my ethical view. Uh, but just the breadth of knowledge and just how long his views like lasted before they became unpopular. Yeah, just astounding. So Aristotle, symbolic logic. I think symbolic logic is overused. I obviously see its use and importance in math and science and computers, but I think it's overused in other subfields like in metaphysics and epistemology and philosophy of language, in ethics, in aesthetics, in philosophy of mind. All, but you see it everywhere. It's ubiquitous, and I think philosophy is the worst for it. I think philosophers should stop using symbolic logic as much as they're doing. Uh, Obviously, in some places it's apropos, but and then yeah, just take it out and probably you'll be better at philosophy. I think the symbolic logic kind of like limits your perspective on things sometimes. Okay, another thing that I have a bias against is possible world semantics to use as overly used, I think. And there's certain versions of possible world semantics. There's the possibilism version, like David Lewis, where he thought, yeah, that the possible worlds had their own reality. And then there's an actualist possible world semantics, where it's more just an abstract tool. Um, I lean towards the abstract tool side, so the actualist side. And I also think that possible world semantics doesn't quite capture the robustness of our thought, and it doesn't quite capture what we're doing with hypothetical statements and yeah, and modal statements. But obviously, it's a tool that it's everywhere. Also, like symbolic logic. Okay, I think I might do a video on how I do philosophy. Um, just my approach, but by that I'll probably just show you what I intend to do is like when I put my papers, I intend to explain all the steps and a lot of the questions that came to my mind that leading to some of the things that I'm saying. So how I do philosophy is more like I'll show you how I do philosophy. Uh, I, the danger of categorizing is going to be another musing. This is a popular view. It's not just my own. That there's a great danger in getting things wrong if we don't realize what we're doing when we categorize things. Like there are some words that are category words, and if you lose sight of that, you might start to misconstrue reality. You might start to think that the way we like the framework of our thinking, the way we process sense data is reality. Okay, I don't know. That's not very eloquent, but anyway, I'll say more when I actually do a video. My Mount Rushmore, so my top three plus yeah, Socrates, Wittgenstein, Aristotle, Nietzsche. Forgotten philosophers, I intend to do every once in a while, I will do a series, not a series. I'll make a video on philosophers that are forgotten, like that maybe were once really popular but no longer studied, or even people who were never really that popular, but like I've come across them or I read one of their papers and I thought they had something interesting to say. So I'll introduce them to you. And finally, my final thought, which isn't my own, I think Bertrand Russell believes something like this, is that writing is requisite for serious thought. If you're not, and philosophy counts as serious thought. Like if you're not writing, you're not really doing philosophy. At least nothing worth like calling philosophy. If you're not putting on paper as eloquently as you can, as forceful as you can, as cogently as you can, your thoughts on a topic, you're not really doing any serious thinking. And you're not doing philosophy. All right, that's it. So that's the main of it, I would say. Um, and I think I'll probably like even take like recommendations and suggestions, but that's going to be a long time from now where I actually have enough people following me or watching the videos that are going to contribute. All right, that's it. So let's hope this isn't too long of a video, and I'll see you guys in the videos. Later.